A problem with the microphone? No problem with the microphone. Hello. What a lovely sight. Phew, I'm not having a problem with the microphone. Thank you for coming. I'm really pleased to be here. And you will have noticed that the title of this evening's session is How to Change the World. And I'd just be curious to know, are you here just to hear someone blather on about that, or are you actually hoping that that's something you might do? Hands up if you're in the second group, the kind of hoping you might do something. All right, okay, good. I'm not going to flush you out if you're in the first group. That's fine. That's great. In fact, it's brilliant just to know what you want from today's session. And actually, what Mark often does, and what I often do at the beginning of a thing like this, is just to say, listen, you lot are going to do a lot of the amazing stuff tonight, and just as a way of kind of honouring each other and saying thanks in advance for what you're going to do, why not actually say thanks in advance to someone you haven't already said hello to? But don't do it yet, don't do it yet. And what I'd really love is if you could turn to someone you don't already know, so you're just doing it in pairs, and say what it is that you're hoping for from this evening. Just that it can be high or low. You could be hoping to be completely blown away so that your head explodes and blah, blah, blah. Or it could be, I hope I don't fall asleep. Just be honest to yourself, whatever your expectations are, but at least define in advance what you're hoping for from this evening. Because whatever I say, and whatever anyone else says to you, all that really matters is what's going on inside you. So would you do that? Is that a deal? Actually, you know what? Before you feel compelled to say yes, at any point in this whole session, if you don't feel like saying yes, you could just go, no. But can I just show you what I did then? I didn't go, no. Because if you say no to me like that, and there's so many of you, I might feel mortified and upset and burst into tears. So you could say no nicely. You can just go, no. Like that. No. Okay. So anyone can say no at any time. No one has to do anything. But if you would like to, now's your chance to turn to someone you don't already know and just say what you'd hope to get out of this evening. And then I'll cut in with my microphone and stop you. Thank you. My goodness. What a lot of energy in this room. I'll soon stamp that out. So how was that? Oh, good. Excellent. If someone says good and you're thinking it was awful, you're allowed to think that. You can even shout it out. I won't be hurt, I promise. But I'd really rather that everyone in the room was really clear about, do this. What does it say? To thine own self. Is that what it says? To thine own self be true? So do that thing, okay? That's higher than I am. It's more important. So just pay attention to what you're thinking about, how it's all going and what matters to you personally. And now one little thought. You don't have to share this with your neighbour. I'd like you to be clear about what you might personally do to undermine your chances of getting that thing out of this session. So if your thing was, I hope I won't fall asleep, don't undermine yourself by shutting your eyes. Do you see what I mean? So identify right now what you might do to undermine yourself, and then you can just not do that thing. So just have a second to think about that. You don't have to tell anyone. I'm going to think as well. Okay, I'm not going to do that thing. How about you? Oh, good. I think. Right. So, hands up if you've already got an idea how you intend to change the world. Okay, not quite so many. That's great. That's fine. It may not be completely finished, even those of you who put your hand up, because if it was finished, you probably wouldn't be here. You'd be back home safely watching Argentina or whatever it is. So it's great that it's not all finished yet. Let's hope it will be by the end of the session. What I'm really excited about, and I truly passionately believe this, is that by the end of this, we will, between us, using the collective genius and goodwill of this room, we're going to have come up with some way that someone in particular in this room is going to really make a really, really big impact, and we're all individually, separately going to go off and do the thing that we want to do. And you're kind of here as an excuse to yourself to identify the thing that you want to do, aren't you? Kind of. So, brilliant. All this goodwill, I'd love to see what it would be like to use some of that goodwill and to think about how this session is kind of about taking all the crummy stuff we've been given and turning it into something bright and gleaming. Because that's what we're doing when we're changing the world. We're taking all this, I didn't want that. And our life is full of a lot of, I didn't want that. All the time we have that. And so at the beginning of this exercise, we're going to be quite clear about what that is that you didn't want. And thinking about all the way through, thinking about how are you in response to the thing that you don't like. And what am I talking about here? I'm going to tell you that Mark mentioned that I'm an improviser. The thing that made me really mad keen on improvising was when I came across this idea that everything is an offer. Everything is an offer. So that this would be better if I had someone up here to demonstrate something with me. Who would like to take the big risk of coming up and demonstrating? You don't have to be good at all. Yeah, brilliant. Okay, that hand went first, but thank you very much. Thank you. Do come up. Thank you. Hey, round of applause. That's brilliant. What's your name?
Julie.
Julie?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to repeat as much as I need to in case you couldn't hear. So, Julie. Right, now, Julie, happy birthday.
Happy birthday. Oh, thank you very much indeed. Brilliant. Yep.
Nice?
Nice, very nice.
Oh,
yeah.
what's it taste of?
Chocolate. Yeah, chocolate cake.
I made it. I made it. Thank you. So, do you know what just happened? Should I decompress what happened? Thank you, by the way. Don't go yet. Don't go yet. Okay, so first of all, is it your birthday?
On the 3rd of July, so it's coming up.
But it's not today, is it?
Not today, no.
How about that? So she accepted my offer. My offer was that it's her birthday. It was quite an obvious offer because I said happy birthday. It was quite coercive. Did you see the way I did that thing? But I was still saying happy birthday. And if Julie wasn't such a... It is Julie, isn't it? I said, okay. If you weren't such a good improviser, you might have said, it's not my birthday. And then I would have felt like a chump, and I wouldn't have looked like a very good improviser. And nor would she. But she didn't do that. She played along with it. You accepted the offer, and it was an open offer. I'd just like to point out it was an open offer because I didn't say, happy birthday, it's a hat, because then she'd have to put it on her head, do you see what I mean? So I let her decide what it was. And there was a moment of blankness, which was delightful, but then you decided what it was. And once you put it there, I had the choice to accept that offer, because you decided it was food. You could have gone, ooh, hello, little cat, or something else. But you did decide what it was, and then that became the offer to me. So everything's an offer. Everything's an offer. But that's easy when it looks like that, when it's a kind of happy birthday. That's nice. That's a nice offer, isn't it? What if I were just to lie down on the stage now? What would happen to Julie then? That could look like a really aggressive act, couldn't it? Are you looking forward to me doing that? Are you? Oh, right, okay. Well, she looks quite happy. Now I need to put myself out of my misery. Because you look so happy, I was thinking, oh no, what happens next? But the thing was, it could have been a really aggressive act, and she could have looked like terrible, upset, and so on. Because it could have been like, I'm leaving her alone in front of the audience who are going to eat her up. But actually, you looked very up for this. I love the way you put your hand up at the very first. Really accepting offers today, Julie, I think. So that was great. But the thing is, even that was an offer. Even that apparently aggressive act was an offer, because in an improvised scene between the two of us, that could be something that allows her to throw water in my face and then I come back to life. Or she could have dug my grave. It's all an offer. She could have laid down beside me. We could have stared up at the stars. It's all an offer. Everything is an offer. Everything is an offer, even the stuff you don't like. Thank you very, very much. Thank you, Julie. Thank you. But so if everything's an offer, what changes? Well, it makes life seem to be full of the most amazing abundance and possibility, because like everything's an offer. Everything, even the horrible stuff is an offer. So what can you do with it? So the point is that it's a different mindset. It's a different way of looking at things. So the offer is in the receiver's hands. What are you going to do? How are you going to receive this crummy thing that you don't really want particularly. I'm going to give you another example of that. So I have a photograph at home. I save it on my computer, and it's of a young black woman. I haven't got the photograph with me here, so I'll be her, okay? Young black woman with a box above her head. She looks really happy. Really, really happy. And so I'm going to ask you now, could the picture possibly be about? You don't know, so what's it about? Call out anything. A load of books. She wrote the books. It's a box with we don't know what's in the box. She made a box. What else could it be? Education. Education. So it could be a crate of books. Brilliant. All of these are wrong, but how could you be right? Because why would you be right? But thank you for the suggestions, because you couldn't know what it was. So I'll give you a little clue. The photograph was taken in Haiti just after the earthquake. Her possessions. Someone say water? Water. What else could it be? A child, yeah. So it's all getting a bit like that now, isn't it? It's slightly different. But anyway, it's still not quite right. I'm going to tell you a little bit more detail so you can get a bit closer to what the thing was. After the earthquake, all the best topsoil was washed away. So that's bad for farmers. All the really good, nutritious topsoil. And people were weeing and pooing everywhere because there were no loos. So she's got in a box a composting toilet. She has the means to capture other people's wee and poo and turn into a great farmer with great riches and success. So you see, her happiness represents an attitude towards other people's wee and poo that most of us probably don't share. And so what I'm trying to say is that we are in relation to everything, and we can decide how we want to accept it, how we want to respond to it. She can respond to that stuff like that. That's pretty good, isn't it? What could we not respond to happily? How can we just turn it around and reframe it? And that's what I'm going to ask you to do. But first of all, I want you to see what it's like to have people make offers and receive offers, and to try it yourself and do it in the spirit of goodwill, which I saw earlier when you were talking to each other. I'd like you just to do a really simple exercise, which is it is actually an improv game, but you can't go wrong. You simply cannot do it wrong. I'd like you to be in pairs for a second. It's more effective if you stand up, but you can always go, no. But I'd rather you stood up. For your sake, you get more energy. You make an offer, you give someone a gift, but you don't tell them what the gift is, they decide. So you might go, and then I'm being the other person now. You go, oh, brilliant, a really oversized football. I didn't plan to say that, it just came out of my mouth. Or you might go, I got this in Paris. And then the person over here says, a really, really interesting French coffin. I don't know where that came from either. But the thing is, I just want the receiver to define what the gift is. Is that okay? And I want you to notice what it's like when you're making an offer in that spirit, which is completely open, and what it's like to be the receiver. Just see what it's like. This is like an exercise in mindfulness, but probably with more laughter. And I'd like you just to see how that is. So if you go into pairs and just keep on giving each other presents, it's very easy. You don't need to know what that person likes. Fun. That looked very happy for as many people as I could see. Maybe I was missing the ones who were really hating it. What was it like? Great. What made it great? The presents. Because it was exactly what you wanted, wasn't it? Brilliant. What else? So this one first, yes. Well, where's the voice? Hello, yes.
It's a difference between what you thought the present was and what they thought the present was.
Okay. So, did you enjoy being a receiver or a giver most? Giver. Okay, that's interesting. Yes, and that one.
Genuinely more exciting than giving real presents.
More exciting to give presents.
Giving real presents, the idea of not knowing what was coming.
So much more exciting.
That was great, yeah.
Great.
I think I might do that for Christmas.
Excellent. Yeah. Thank you. Over here now. Thank you.
John, for me, the most exciting thing was my partner's imagination. That was the part we really excited about.
Right, so you just don't know what they're going to come up with. And that's quite brilliant because it could be completely bonkers or it could be really like normal, whatever normal is. But each of us has a normal which to someone else looks quite bonkers. I once did an event where I was talking after someone who'd played the flute with his nose. That was his normal. Anyway, so our own normal could be quite remarkable and delightful to other people. Hands up if you thought it was hard to give those presents. Some people do. Okay, it's quite hard. Like, how can it be difficult? Because there's no wrong, but it's funny, isn't it? Just be curious about what your own experience was in the game. Like, what made it hard? Because it's more important for you to understand that. What made it hard? Was it about finding the satisfaction? And also, were you worried when you were the receiver that you weren't coming up with something interesting enough or crazy, or did you pause a bit? Were you anxious not to say the first thing that came into your head, because then they'll think I'm mad, so you come up with something a little bit safer? The guy who taught me improv, Keith Johnston, used to talk about how the best thing to do was just to blurt out the first thing that comes into your head. Even if he says something like, he'd say something like, put your hand in the air, what are you doing? And the first thought that comes into your head is, I'm milking a giraffe. But you don't say that, you say, I'm just holding on to the strap on the tube. It's not so fun, is it? So go with the thing that you want to go with. Just be honest and authentic, and to thine own self be true. So that's this idea about just what kind of offers are you making into the world, and how are you at receiving what you're being given? This point again about if you're being given a whole load of human manure, what are you going to do with it? If the world is full of something that's a problem for you, what are you going to do with that? How are you going to reframe it and turn it into something delightful, compelling and exciting and improving of the whole world and of your world? All questions that I hope we'll get some answers to. But this idea about changing the world, how many of us really believe that we change the world? Probably not that many. It's a kind of rather grandiose turn of phrase, isn't it? Change the world, ooh, big deal. But actually you are all changing the world, affecting the world all the time, making a difference all the time. We all have an impact. So for a long time, English history, and I'm sure in other countries similarly, took the view that history is but the biography of great men. That is what Thomas Carlyle said. History is but the biography of great men. So if you know the biography of great men, you understand history. If you are not a man or a great man, then you're out of the game, you don't count for anything. And so for 100 years or so, happily, we've had a different way of looking at it. And Tolstoy was one of the first people who came along with the alternative view, which is that history is more correctly regarded as an infinitely large number of infinitesimally small things that we all do and don't do all the time. What do I mean, don't do? Like if you're not up all night feeding the hungry, that's an impact that you're having. But that's okay, we all need sleep. We can't all do everything, but what you're not doing has an effect just as much as what you are doing. And what Tolstoy is saying is effectively, it's a bit like you're voting in the general election of how things are. All the time. We know that in an election you vote for this party or that party or none of the buggers because you don't trust them. But it doesn't really matter because whatever you do, we all know that you're having an effect on the final result. Agreed? I think we broadly agree with that. So what are you allowing? What are you accepting? What are you voting for by implication, whether you're doing anything about it or not? We're all contributors to the status quo. Often we think of the status quo as a horrible thing that's over there, and it's rather annoying, and it gets in the way of all this stuff of ours. We're part of the status quo. We define what the status quo is like. If you want a more human, accessible way of thinking about the status quo, think about a powerful king on the stage. So if I was a powerful king on the stage now, what do you need to see on stage to make me a powerful king? What could it be? What do you need? What? Big throne. Thank you. Anything else? A crown. Yep. Red velvet cloak. Yep, for sure. I wouldn't want to go without that. Anything else? Big scepter. Lots of big things. Okay? Yeah. Anything else? Mace. Okay, so all of these things make it clear that I am a king. But what makes me a powerful king? Guards. What are they doing? So they're not like having a fag and telling jokes, and they're serving me. And maybe there's some people flat on their face before me doing, yes, do that thing. So that's what the status quo is. It's everyone flat on their face before this thing. But if those people got up off their face, if the guards cleared off and went and had a drink, then the same powerful king would have the big mace and the big throne and everything. Wouldn't be powerful anymore. It's them that makes the king powerful. Their behaviour that makes the king powerful. Just one of them turning his back reduces the power of the king quite dramatically. So if you think about that powerful king as a human embodiment of the status quo, are you bowing down, or are you up off? Are you going and helping yourself to a drink and doing something better? You have the choice. You always have the choice. So I'd like you to think about what is the status quo that you are building and contributing to. If you want to complain about it, you are entitled to complain about it. If you don't also want to do anything about it, you're just being a bit of a pain in the neck, because you're not going to do anything about it. So why not just forget the complaints and just have fun? Whee! You've decided that you don't care enough about that thing, so you might as well just enjoy life instead of complaining. What do you think? I think so. You don't have to agree. Remember, to thine own self be true. So what is the thing that matters most to you? I'd like you to really be thinking about that. What is one thing that matters to you this evening? If I say, what is the thing that matters most to you, you'll get all freaked out and it'll be like, oh God, he's going to put it on my gravestone and I've got to get the right one. And so don't try and think about the gravestone thing. Just go for the one that this evening, in a fairly frivolous mood, you decide, well, not frivolous, but light-hearted, this evening you just went, this is this evening's thing. What's one thing that you don't like? What's the human manure in your life at this moment? What do you want to fix? But don't jump ahead to fixing it. Think about what the dissatisfaction is. Be really clear about the dissatisfaction and the problem. Just allow yourself, for this moment, to be really clear about what you're actually really not very happy about. Don't try to avoid that by jumping off into solutions, because if you don't know for sure what the problem is, how can you ever find a solution? Is that a deal? So take a moment, and then I'm going to ask you to talk to your neighbour about this thing, just to compare notes, just to get it out there, because it's really useful to say it, because it gives it reality. So I'm going to shut up while you think about the thing that really matters to you. What would you really like to have changed because you're not liking it? If it helps, think of something in your family life, or for a member of your family, or think of something in your neighbourhood, or think of something in your workplace, or think of something in the whole world. Choose one of those and just go with one of them. There will be plenty more. You may not have got it absolutely pinned down, but I hope that you'll have had a little flickering, a glimmering, a glimpse of something that you're not really that happy about. I certainly felt the energy in the room drop. What would be really good is if you could turn to your neighbour, and because you're offering each other a space to think about this thing that really matters to you, go for it. Just be really open and honest about that thing, and try also to be specific. You're doing each other a great favour because you're allowing each other to get clarity on something that really matters to you. So just the first person go now, and then I'll interrupt you so we know for sure the second person will have time. So try to be specific and pin down the thing that you're bothered by. Don't try to jump into solutions. Go for that now, and then I'll swap you over so the second person gets a chance. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Can you please now swap over so the other person gets the chance to talk? Thank you. So please swap over now. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Brilliant. I'm going to do what I often do and have already done several times, which is ask you in a minute, I'm going to ask you a question. But Mark, do you think we could pass around some of the bits of paper? Hands up if you've got a pen with you. That's quite a high score of pens, because I'm sorry, I forgot to ask for pens. So if you've got your own pen, you don't have to give it to anyone, but if we could pass around some paper, that would be brilliant. It's not super urgent, because I'm not going to ask you to write down right this second, but if we could start passing the paper, that would be brilliant. What was it like to share that with each other, considering you were only whining and complaining rather than trying to find a solution? It was deeper than whining. Yeah, I was being totally facetious, I should say that. I wasn't really whining. But what was it like to share that thing that matters to you? Okay. Embarrassing because you haven't got much to complain about. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So maybe that I set it up wrong and asked you to think about things you're complaining about. There might be things in the world that you don't think are right. I'll bet there are some. And whatever you think of as the world, it's your world. It could be things in your house, it could be things in your street, it could be things in India. It doesn't really matter what you're deciding you're not really satisfied with. And there's a really broad spectrum between complaining about one's own insignificant things and genuinely being a passionate crusader for righteousness and truth, etc. There's also a spectrum between being a bit annoyed by things and be a bit dissatisfied and absolutely bloody furious because things are not right. So somewhere in that area is your source of dissatisfaction. Thank you for being honest about that, because most of us probably feel quite anxious about saying the thing that we really care about. Does anyone else feel a little bit odd sharing that? A little bit of nodding. Other people seem to have found it quite satisfying. Yes, a hand up. So it's life enhancing because they cared as well, or because they listened to you? Both. Brilliant, thank you. So it's life enhancing even to hear that stuff about what people care about. Anything else? Yes.
I think the thing, when you say something out loud, it's more like it comes true. So by sharing that thing, does it then become a bigger problem than it was before, or does it become a problem you're applying great scrutiny to, and therefore a lesser problem?
What do you think?
I think it becomes more true.
More true.
By saying it out loud and giving the breathing concept.
Yeah. Right. I so passionately agree with that. I think that once we get it out, we've made some sort of a commitment. You can write it down in your diary very quietly, and you've still made a commitment. But saying it to someone, heavens, even a stranger in a room like this, that's really a commitment, isn't it? Even though they're a stranger, you've said it. And that's really something. And suddenly something new about you becomes true. And I don't know quite what that mysterious thing is. I don't want to be too woo-woo about it. But if you think about children's stories, whenever a wizard or a witch casts a spell, they don't do it quietly in their own head, do they? It's very important to say it out loud. And you've just done that. You've already kind of started casting the spell because you've said the thing that matters to you, which is great. So now I'd like to do a little exercise. I'd like to do what will seem like a very reductive exercise, but I'm doing it for a good reason. Trust me, please. I'm going to ask you to put your hand up if your thing that you just talked about comes under one of the following headers. So then we'll see what's in the room, what kind of topics affect the people in this room most care about. So it does seem really reductive, but if we could try to do that. Mark, would you sort of keep an eye on which ones get, broadly speaking, the highest number of hands up, and which one is lower. I'll try and watch as well. Thank you. So, hands up if your thing broadly comes under environment. The environment. Do your hands really high, even if you're feeling a bit wobbly, just because then we'll see. Okay, thank you. So probably a couple for an environment. What about justice? Justice. Really high. Okay, thank you. More that time. What about war and conflict? Okay. Not that many. What about poverty? Okay, thank you. And education? Right. What other big topics have I missed? Health. Health, thank you. Hands up for health. Okay. What's winning, Mark?
About 4 things similar there, actually. Health, education, and justice.
Yeah. Anything else that I've missed, like as a top line, big title topic? Personal development. Oh, okay. Personal development. Oh. How could I have forgotten on a night like this? Okay. So personal development is the winner. Yay! If you put your hands up for personal development, give yourself a big yay! Yay! Oh, good. Excellent. So, and if you put one of the, maybe, was it 2 hands that went up for the environment? Can you flush yourselves out again? 1, 2, okay, right, how does that feel? Yeah, I just want to make a marker about that because it can feel really, sorry. Okay, all-round well-being. Is yours broadening into all-round well-being, or are you still on the environment? Environment. So you're actually on your own. Okay. So I just want to really draw attention to this, and from the nicest place, it's lovely if you're one of many who's like, yeah, personal development, yeah, we rock. Everyone cares about that thing. That's nice, isn't it? Because you think you're going to do something, and how are you feeling about your chances with environment? You'll have to work hard. Okay. So I just want to draw attention to that because it can feel quite demoralising to be, as it were, on your own. Now, maybe only in this particular audience for this moment, and maybe you actually work at Greenpeace and, you're sorted for lots of allies, and that's fine. But I just wanted to draw attention to it for now, because it's important to see what kind of an effect we have when we don't feel that we've got any kind of an ally, and also what it's like when we realise that we have. So then, once you've got those topics, I just want to reinforce the importance of really going for the thing that you personally care for. Because at this point in a talk like this, it would be very easy for everyone to put their hands up for something tremendously important and worthy that they don't really care for all that much. Like, fixing world poverty or picking up more litter or something. You might go, I'd better do that because everyone expects that. And you're not really doing it because you passionately want to yourself. Hands up if you came here wanting to change the world by doing something really beautiful and delightful, like writing a novel or putting on a play or gardening more. Anyone got any of that stuff? Okay, what was yours? What was it, for example?
All of the things.
All of those?
One thing that I do a lot is just keep talking. So if I'm in a coffee with you, I'll talk to the person in front of me and incrementally I make things better that way. So
Brilliant.
that's a beautiful.
So about introducing something beautiful and delightful. Thank you. And there were a couple of other hands that went up there. I left that out, that kind of delightful thing, because so often when we think about making a difference and making a change in the world, it feels like it's got to be something really worthy. But actually, where would we be without Jane Austen novels, or without anyone doing the gardening at Kew, or, things like that which are nice and delightful, and that's their passion, and that's what they want to do, and that's brilliant. Because if you try to do something because you think you ought to, you're not going to do it with any kind of commitment. You're not going to stick with it. Like that thing about pick up more litter, like how long am I going to last on that one? I know, I don't like litter, but I'm not going to last for more than a day or two. It's not compelling for me. So be really honest to yourself about what do you really want to do? What is your contribution? What are you going to do? Imagine if Shakespeare thought, no, I really ought to fix world hunger first. Where would we be? So we do need to think about these things. World hunger is great if that's your thing. And if the environment is your thing, I really hope that later on, the whole collective genius of the room will come and rally around your idea. But shall we see whether that's something that we can do in a little bit. So you're thinking about what really matters to you, and then you might have to start thinking about the sheer magnitude of this thing and turning it into something really amazing. And then you'll probably get all those overwhelming thoughts about how you'll never manage it, and you've got, you're not good enough, and haven't got time, and all the negative thoughts will kick in as soon as you start to present yourself with this opportunity, this delightful opportunity. But what is the opportunity going to consist of? It's going to consist of probably three types of things. The American academic Gene Sharp has done a study of all sorts of non-violent political action throughout history and around the world. He spent about 60 years studying this, since he started studying Gandhi, not because he thought Gandhi was a really lovely guy, but because he thought he was a brilliant political tactician. And Gene Sharp was fascinated by what can be achieved without killing or hurting people. So he thought his big gift to the world would be to make a really comprehensive database, a store of knowledge of what has been achieved by people being active non-violently. Horrible words, non-violent action. It sort of sounds terribly off-putting, doesn't it? Most people watching Argentina are not going to be leaping to turn the TV off so they can watch something about non-violent political action. But the thing is that all it means is doing something that is going to make change and not hurting anyone. And Gene Sharp's drawn up this list. He's one of the people who I've been blessed to have interviewed as a journalist. He drew up this list of precisely 198 forms of non-violent action, which I think is brilliant and mad. And I told him, why couldn't you come up with two more? Just make a nice round number. It's like 198. What is that about? But he said, no, I think I've pretty well got them all. Okay. But he conceded that there might be a few new ones. There was one that popped up in the 1970s or 80s when the Japanese manufacturers came up with just-in-time manufacturing. The Japanese unions came up with go faster striking, because it really annoyed the bosses. So I think that's quite a good idea. I like that one. And so Gene admitted that that was a new one someone had come up with. But these things, there are 198 of them, okay, and they go back through history. Am I making too much noise? Am I all right? Okay. Suddenly I thought I heard feedback. So they go back through history. One of them is, let's take the Bible. When the Pharaoh wasn't being good, Moses and the Israelites just got out of there. Exodus is a form of non-violent action, because Pharaoh can't do much to you when you're in Israel now, if he's in Egypt. You see what I mean? So getting out of there is one of the forms of action. Any number of different forms of action that he's captured from throughout history. Some brilliant stuff about what people did under the Nazis. Any number of different really interesting things that really rattled the regime and had absolutely delightful and beneficial effect. But if you take all of those 198 forms of non-violent action and you boil down to three basic ones, they all come in under these three headings. The first heading is drawing attention to something that really matters. As simple as that, just drawing attention to something. You've already done that a moment ago when you described the thing that matters. That was drawing attention to a thing that matters. You were just telling your neighbour, but it could have had a big effect. What was the word that you used about the effect that it had? You said something about it being life-enhancing. That's a pretty good effect, isn't it? Thank you. So drawing attention to something that matters. The second one is not continuing to have anything to do with the thing that you don't like. So an easy way of remembering that is like the boycott. You don't like that supermarket, you don't shop there. So no longer going along with the thing you dislike. And the third one is building a better alternative to what's currently available. Now that could take any number of different shapes and forms. Going back over those three. The first one, drawing attention to an issue. It could be drawing people's attention to something that nobody's ever heard of, like the ozone hole. Nobody had heard of it, and then they had, and then something happened. Or it could be drawing people's attention to something that they all know about, but they're not taking seriously, which is really important. How do you do it? Well, I'd say there is a relationship between how difficult it is for you to publicise this thing and what the likely benefits are. So if you simply put it on Facebook, well done. It's not going to have an enormous impact on the world, probably. But if you do something really putting yourself out there, you'll have a bigger effect. Probably there's a relationship between how difficult it is. So the White Rose Group in Germany, these medical students who were also in the army on the Eastern Front, they decided to start sending letters to other Germans under the Nazi regime, describing what the regime was doing in their name. They sent the letters to people whose addresses they got from the phone book at random, and they sent them all over the country. There are only a handful of these students. And so suddenly letters were turning up in people's letterboxes. Can you imagine the impact of getting this thing telling you what they're all doing? And like, what do you do with this? Do you give it to your friends who are also kind of slightly anti-regime, or do you give it straight to the Gestapo? It's like, oh, okay, now I've got this thing, I've got some responsibility. How am I receiving this offer? So that's quite a big impact they were having with every single letter that dropped through the letterboxes. And they did a lot. They got hold of a printing press. They sent it to addresses all over the country. They got incredibly brave and bold about it and travelled across the country on trains with luggage stuffed full of these leaflets, and even with their printer. You can imagine how dangerous that was. If anyone inspected their luggage, they're in big trouble. They did that so that they could post them from Stuttgart to Dresden and from Cologne to Munich and all over the place. It looked like they were a national network, and there was just a small handful of them. So that's amazing, and it's dangerous. And you know what? I'm not going to kid you. They got caught and they got executed. That's the big impact, and it's related to the danger that was involved. So you decide what level of danger or hard work you want to engage with. If it's putting something on Facebook, fine. That's better than nothing. It's entirely up to you. The other one about refusing to go along with the thing that you don't like, well, that makes common sense, doesn't it? And really, doesn't it just make common sense? If you're not going to stop doing that, then you're not really playing along with it. I'd encourage you to go and look at Gene Sharp's list of the things that you can do. So now, you've got this opportunity to raise the people's attention to the thing that matters to you. And you've just described it to yourself and to your neighbour as something that bothers you. How can you reframe it and turn it into something delightful? Because it is actually the same thing. It's the opportunity. It is the human manure thing, do you remember? What is the delightful thing? What would it be if you reframed it so that it looks like the success at the other end? So, her success, I'm going to be a big farmer, and I'm going to have loads of fruit trees growing, and everyone's going to be coming round to my lavatory. That might be her way of describing success. What is your way of turning this thing into a success? Try to turn it into a different sentence, and work with the same neighbour to do that, because they already know what this issue is, and you can work together. If you're a listener, don't force your ideas on the other person. Be willing to share them if they want them. But if you take turns again, turn your thing you don't like into what success would look like with that thing. And I'll swap you over when the time comes. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Can I ask you to swap over now so you both get a chance? Thank you very much. The energy level has risen again. So how was that different from, experientially, how was it different? Not what was the sentence, how did that change, but what was it like to reframe it as the success? It's okay? Was it difficult, or was it okay? Difficult. Okay. We're quite wary. Generally speaking, we tend not to want to describe the success because then we've made another commitment and then we have to try and do that thing. So it's a bit alarming. So we often retreat from being quite as ambitious as we would like to be. And my suggestion or request to you is to think if you could make it even bigger and even more delightful. And so what you're already doing is you're moving away from the sort of emphasis on the negative, which is right at a certain point in this process. That's what you were doing. But the key thing ultimately is to move away from making despair convincing and starting to make hope possible. So that's what you're trying to do. That's a line from the philosopher Raymond Williams. make hope possible, not despair convincing. And that's what we're trying to do. You're also, by identifying what it would look like with success, you're actually giving yourself something actually to try to aim for. If you don't define the parameters of what success is, you will not know whether you have succeeded. You do need to do that. You won't know whether you failed either. You'll just be trundling along in a bit of a muddle, probably. And partly what you're maybe doing is sending yourself a happy postcard from the future. This is what it looks like when we get it right. It's going to be like this. And that's a really delightful idea. I nicked that idea wholesale from Rob Hopkins, who runs a Transition Town, well, sort of jointly founded the completely flat structure Transition Town movement. And he talks about sending yourself a postcard from the future. And I found that so delightful when I was in my dark space about climate change in 2005. They were the only people who were finding an upbeat way of looking at this. Everywhere I went, I joined all the obvious people, you know, the Friends of the Earth and Greenpeace and things. And it was with them, it was a little bit like receiving a lot of postcards that were saying how grotty and disgusting everything's going to be. I didn't want to go on that holiday. I wanted to go on the postcard from the future that the transition towns were coming up with, which was saying you're going to know your neighbours and you're going to be growing things and making things and we're all going to be having fun teaching each other stuff and it's all going to be delightful. I thought, yeah, I want some of that. So sending yourself a happy postcard from the future and working out backwards how you get there, that's quite a nice idea. It's also incredibly daunting because you think, I can't ever get there. That's an amazingly long way away from where I am now. And the small steps are something that we forget about. I'm going to come back to the small steps, but I want to talk about how constantly there's this process in us and in others of blocking the things that we're scared of. So when we talked about, when Julie demonstrated accepting offers, the thing in impro, what you don't want is people blocking. Because if someone blocks and says it's not my birthday, then... And blocking this is a really important thing that Mark reminded me this afternoon. It's a really important part of changing the world, is our interpersonal relations. And I just want to take a moment to talk about blocking. Because this is a way that we can affect the people around us all the time, all day. And that's by being curious about our own tendency to block. And what are we blocking about? And how are we blocking? Do you remember I said about saying no? There's that kind of block, which is less painful than the other one that I attempted to demonstrate to you. Blocking is basically when you're contradicting or throwing up a barrier to something. Broadly speaking, we say no to things that we're scared of. Keith Johnson, who taught me impro, said a lot of people in life say no to a lot of things. And those tend to be the people who say, why is my life so boring? And then there are other people who say yes to everything and they think, my life's out of control, my God, what's happening? And so we all have the choice about which attitude we're going to have. And at any given moment, you have the choice to be really in touch with yourself about what you want to say yes and what you want to say no to. So if you're in certain parts of Soho, or maybe somewhere else now, and someone makes a certain kind of proposition, it's completely right to say no. You can say no. But you can say it however you like, frankly. But the point is, I'm not saying to anyone, don't say no. Absolutely, I'm not. I'm asking you to be attentive to what it's like when you block other people in everyday life. Because we all notice when other people do it, we don't notice so much when we do it. What does it even look like in blocking? I sometimes play an impro game where I ask people to block deliberately, on purpose, to say no, even though they're being offered something that they would normally want. So I might have someone on stage and I'd be making an offer, and let's make it a her, just to differentiate me. She would say no to whatever I'm offering. Okay, I'm only offering a meal at her favourite restaurant, which by definition she wants. So, hey, I've got a table at your favourite restaurant. No, I'm busy. That might be how it goes. And she's got to keep on saying no to whatever I offer. And in that game, whatever I throw at her, she's got to block. And in that game, we both notice what we're happy blocking with or not blocking. So she might find it very difficult to say no to anyone at all. So she'll end up giving up and saying, okay, when do we go? Or she might be really good at blocking and just going, nope, nope, nope. And then I'm just totally defeated. And we notice our body language, we notice all sorts of things. That's easy to see that kind of blocking, the saying no to stuff. More often we don't say no. We say, yes, but... That has exactly the same impact on the other person. Oh. And we also do blocks which don't even look like blocks. They sound delightful. So here's an example. A girl, a very troubled girl, schoolgirl, was taken to the park by a teacher who was highly trained at that sort of thing, ought to have been very good at dealing with this girl. And the girl picks up a flower and says, this is the most beautiful flower in the world. And the teacher looks at it and then looks around and says, I think they're all beautiful. And then the girl has a tantrum, because basically the girl has been blocked. She's been contradicted. You see how that happens? That kind of energy of blocking or contradicting happens all the time, every day. We're constantly doing it. Other people do it to us and we feel a little flinch. We don't even notice exactly what it is, but we've been blocked. I got to a point where I started playing this with my daughter. It drove her nuts. I'd say, you blocked me. And then she started doing it back to me, which I hated. But anyway, the point is that we're starting to notice when you're blocking and when you're not blocking, and wondering whether you could do it differently. After you've played that game as an improviser, when you're training as an improviser, you move on to another game where you just say yes and to everything. And you end up having the most extraordinary adventures, usually taking imaginary hard drugs on the moon. Something like that, because there's no limit. Everything gets expanded upon. There's yes and. Everything goes completely potty. So what would it be like to start saying yes and to things and to amplify and to build on what the other person is offering? That's what I'm going to ask this whole room. Remember, I keep talking about the creative genius of this whole room. We're going to use that. We're going to amplify. We're going to yes and around possibly one person over there's issue about the environment. If she's up for it, you can say no. And so what's it like to build on it and to say yes and to even as an exercise, just to pretend that you're up for it and to join in. But I really want to emphasize the importance of small steps. Because at this moment you may be looking at your big vision and your dream and thinking, I'm never going to get there. So it's really important to notice nothing that any human being has ever achieved has been achieved except in small steps. Leonardo didn't get one paintbrush and go, there you are, Mona Lisa. It was more than that. And people didn't go to the moon, just they wake up and go to the moon. And lots of people boringly had to go into the office in Houston and do lots of things, little things. And they're all important. Without any of them, maybe the whole moon mission wouldn't have worked. They're all important. And what I'm trying to say to you is enjoy the small steps and make them valuable in their own right. Really, really try to do that. It's so easy to be mesmerised by that thing over there that we forget that these things are the really important ones. They're really exciting. You might not, we're all mortal. I might not make it home tonight. In which case, I hope you've had a nice talk. But actually, I hope you've had a nice talk anyway. But the point is that we don't know how long we've got. So we have to act as if this is the most important bit. This is the most important bit. If you can hold in your mind at the same time the idea that you might not live for another day and you might live for a very long time, then you're probably on the right tracks. 2 thoughts, 1 brain. See if you can do that. So constantly hold in your head the long goal, the long distance goal, the thing where you want to go to, and to really enjoying this thing. And it's much easier to do that if you're not obsessed with your to-do list and you're always failing on your to-do list. Oh God, there's so many more things on the to-do list. So fall in love with your done list. I've done all these things. I've been into Houston and done boring things for many days. Or I've done lots of dabs on my canvas. Try to notice how much you've already done. Really give yourself a pat on the back. People are so bad at doing that. And I give you the gift of patting yourself on the back. There you are. You can go off and do it forever. And it's a good thing to do. So small steps are valuable. When Gandhi was spinning cotton in India, on the spinning wheel that he had invented himself, sitting on the floor, feeling like a chump, because did he really think that was going to get the British out of India? Well, that is how he felt. You might think, what am I saying about Gandhi? He knew what he was doing. But at the time, he didn't feel confident that that was going to work. We know from the things that have been written about him and from what he wrote that he had to turn again and again to the Bhagavad Gita, to the Hindu scripture, and read the passage in which Lord Krishna reminds us to enjoy the small steps for their own sake, to really enjoy them. That might have made it a bit easier to sit on the floor and do some spinning. And indeed, after enough Indians had done their own spinning, there was less of a market for the British to buy Indian cotton and then sell it back to India. So it did help. Small steps will help. So how can you fall in love with those small steps? And what are those small steps going to be? I want to turn you all now into one great big human problem-solving machine. Is that all right? Okay, excellent. That wasn't a wholehearted yes, but I'm going to assume that it was. You look like a human problem-solving machine to me. And what I'm going to hope that we can do is to generate some ideas for you. Are you okay for that? So, brilliant, thank you. Could we have a microphone over there? Or would you like to come up here? Entirely up to you. Okay, microphone over there. Thank you. Thank you. Will you tell us what your name is?
It's Alex.
Hello, Alex. Thank you for doing this. what I'm hoping that we can do is to demonstrate, to model this 5-step problem-solving process, which you can then all go off and do with anyone else or even on your own. But I wanted to go with Alex because Alex was the one who was all on her own, remember, and now we've got everyone behind her, and that's quite a different sort of feeling altogether. So we're going to do something where I'm going to try and get to the bottom of what the problem is for you. You've already rehearsed it together in a pair. Then I'm going to be really dim and stupid and not get the point at all, just so that I can try and be really clear so everyone else is clear. And then we'll try and think about how to reframe it so that that's your sort of golden, glimmering dream. And then everyone in the room is going to just generate lots of brainstorming all at once. So we'll have all of these people in about 1 minute come up with an idea, and then suddenly you'll have a lot of ideas in 1 minute, which is easier than you having to do it all on your own, maybe. Okay, is everyone following this? Okay, so the first step of this 5-step human problem-solving machines process is to be clear about what is the problem. So can we not jump to the gleaming thing yet? Can you just say what you're not happy about?
I'm not happy that there are so many human beings in the world who think that human beings are the most important thing and don't appreciate the value of the other animals that have to share the planet with us.
So I'm probably being really dim, but I apologise for that in advance. Are you more unhappy that people don't understand, or that animals and other creatures aren't treated well?
Both. I think I see sort of animal suffering, particularly see it when I go abroad, but I know it exists in the UK as well because I read about the way that farm animals and livestock are treated, and I think that stems from a lack of understanding that animals are sentient beings as well.
Right. And thank you very much. I mean, I'm not going to be so stupid as all that, and it's fairly clear what's going on here. Just as a matter of interest, though, I can see why that's a problem for the animals. What makes it a problem for you personally? Because you could have chosen anything else. Why is this a thing that you care about?
It's a problem for me because I care about animals. I care about the animals that are in my life, and so when I see other animals suffering, it's sort of, it hits me as well. So
Right.
Empathy, perhaps.
Okay, thank you. So now we've got this really big thing, which is to reduce animal suffering in an unspecified area, and which animals, and so that's really huge and magnificent that it's so huge. If you had to narrow it down to start with something, I'm going to ask you in a second what that might be, but I'll explain for a moment why one might want to do that. So you look at desegregation in the United States. It's more complicated than this, but people sort of think it started when one seamstress refused to give up her seat to a white person on the bus in Montgomery, Alabama. Now, Rosa Parks. It was obviously more complicated than that, but that's often perceived to be how it started. So let's pretend that Rosa Parks started it all by refusing to give up her bus. That's one person complaining about the seating rules in Montgomery, Alabama. She wasn't trying at one stroke to get desegregation everywhere. It got bigger and accumulated. So if you were to start with one small bit, would that be a particular kind of animal, or would it be in a particular country? What would you like to start with?
Well, I recently went abroad to another country in Europe and saw, in particular, the way that cats on the street were treated there. So that's what's freshest in my mind at the moment.
Which country was that?
That was Montenegro.
Okay. So what would be now, if you can flip it, because you probably did flip it just now, what's the dream?
The dream would be to help the people in that country, to help the animals within their country, and essentially to find a way to make them want to do that.
Great. So is everyone clear with that? Okay, so thank you very much. Thank you. What I would really like everyone to do who has a pen, and if you do have a pen, you could share it with someone after you've written something down, you could share it with someone who doesn't. I'd really like you to write down one suggestion in clear handwriting. It's very important, otherwise it's worthless. I'd like you to write down one suggestion. Don't do it yet, because I just want to tell you a little thing about how we can brainstorm. So everyone in the room who's got a pen and a piece of paper is going to write a suggestion for you. want you to pause. Okay, let's imagine that you don't really give a stuff about animals. Okay, that's okay. If that's your view, we'll just hold that thought. I think it's probably unlikely in this room. But I want to tell you about this study that was done in the 1970s about creativity. Some management consultants, they weren't called that then in the 70s, they were time and motion people, men. The time and motion men went around asking about creativity, and they went to ask sort of performers and painters and all those sorts of creative people. They gave them some questions. Those creative people got really high scores for creativity, of course. And then the time and motion men went and asked boring people who wear suits and work in offices, and they got really low scores. But this is the bit that I love about this test. They went back to the boring people who wear suits and work in offices and said, could you take the test as if you were hippies? And then they got amazing scores, like really creative. So that was delightful. So what I'd like you to do is, even if you don't care about animals, can you pretend that you're hippies? As if you do care about animals. Is that right? So give yourself full permission to pretend that you care about this thing. And then I'd like you to write down whatever comes to mind. So you could write something really flippant, if that's how you're feeling now. If you feel really earnest, write that thing. If you're feeling angry, write that thing. But what you're designing are small steps, things that we can do to tackle this problem. So please, just write them down. And if you need to share your pen with someone, please do that. If you've done it already, or when you've done it, please start passing the bits of paper that way. Thank you. I feel like I've been watching one great big yes and I feel like I should thank all the people clustered around Alex for being paper handlers. Alex, have you still got your microphone?
Yes, I have. Is it working?
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone. We don't know what the bits of paper say. How exciting. You will find out, Alex. The second part of the problem-solving exercise was what we've just done. So the first part was being clear about what the problem is and kind of what the aim is. The second part is the brainstorm, the coming up with possible solutions. We can do it on our own. Of course we can brainstorm on our own. You just have to have a slightly different attitude. You have to be allowed to, you have to let all the ideas out without judging them. You don't go, oh, I like you. And then this one feels all lonely and left out. So you must just brainstorm and just throw it all out and not judge them until step 3, which is where you take out the ones that just don't really do it for you. So if you're doing it on your own, you just strike a line through them. Well, you can do this on your own, you just take more minutes. Or you can do it with any of your friends and just tell them the thing about pretending to be hippies. It doesn't matter if they care about your thing. And so you strike out the ones that you don't like, that's step 3. And there's no hard feelings to anyone, okay? No bad karma about Alex, just taking those out. And then the next, step 4 is just elevating the ones that you personally, because this is your mission, although it's suddenly got rather much bigger, you personally like those best. So that's step 4, you elevate those ones. And then the last step is to think about what you will do, what you will actually do, what you will do in the next 24 hours. And I'd like that challenge to be made to all of you. You've all come up with a thing that bothers you and that you would like to turn into a delightful thing. So what can you do as a small step in the next 24 hours? We're going to come back to Alex in a moment, but will you now just turn to your neighbours and just tell them, just blurt out one thing you'll do in the next 24 hours towards making a small step towards getting to that thing. So everyone gets a chance to tell their neighbour something that you'll do. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Did you come up with something? Oh, good. Okay. Good. If you didn't, you still can. You have another 23 hours and quite a lot of minutes. But I do urge you to think about what you can do in the next 24 hours. Because if you can't do anything in the next 24 hours and don't do anything in the next 24 hours, what makes you think you ever will? Really? So, there's that challenge. And once you've done that, you'll be one step closer. And you can think about what to do in the 24 hours after that. And you can start to capture at the end of the week, for example, you could capture what have you actually done this week, and you go, oh yeah, now I've done that thing. I've turned into a person who does that and that and that and that and that, and I'm that much closer. So you can all do that. But I'd like to ask Alex, what did you find yourself saying that you will do in the next 24 hours?
I said that I would read all of the bits of paper. Look at the ideas.
That's a fair answer. And thank you for being sure that you will do that. As a matter of interest, what was it like to be at the centre of that exercise? The whole thing, like when I pinpointed, what was the whole process like?
Well, it's pretty amazing, really, to get everybody giving their ideas and giving me all these suggestions. All that I had really done so far was to email a couple of charities and, to be honest, not really got much of a response. So it's quite phenomenal to have all these ideas.
And you felt what from these other people?
Support and collaboration.
Thank you. So amazing, and all these words are lovely. Lucky Alex. What was it like for you, though? What was it like for you to be part of her thing? What was it? Useful. Thank you. Anything else? Easy? You want to help? Was it annoying to be involved, or was it sort of delightful, or sort of not one thing or the other? Yes. Cat, brilliant. I don't know if everyone heard that. You have a cat phobia, but having become a hippie, you came up with useful suggestions. Brilliant. I'm delighted to hear that. Thank you very much. The point that I'm trying to make, and I'm not trying to be too coercive about it, is that, yes, it's quite nice for her, but it's actually, for many people in the room, I suspect, quite satisfying to have been part of that. And it did start here, and it only started here because everyone was a part of it. So you don't have to have allies who are sort of all cat experts and who love cats. You can have allies who are cat phobic, and they turn out to be very helpful. So isn't that delightful that we can all have access to any of those people if we ask? So do please ask. Ask people. Tell them what the thing is that you want to do. Even just telling them is a big start. And if you ask them for their help, that might be great too. And they always have the choice to accept your offer or not to accept it. They can go, no. And if they say no, that's okay. Move on to the next person. It's been really, really lovely being in front of this enormous, delightful, intelligent and attractive human problem-solving machine. Thank you very much.
To do an improviser, I never quite know what you were expecting or planning or doing.
Yeah.
I have a cast to beware.
Okay. No, I won't do anything.
I wasn't meaning to interrupt,
Okay.
but I thought I'd come up and
thank you. I'm all done. I'm all finished. Yeah.
So Jean-Paul, fantastic. That was different to what I'd seen you do last time, and equally and wonderfully inspiring. So made me think about a lot of things. One of the things I like about the happiness movement and mission, this idea of creating a world where more people experience happy, fulfilling lives, is it immediately gets rid of this sort of my issue versus the world's issue. Because actually, if we're thinking through that lens, it's like if I want the world to be a better place, actually, it does genuinely start with how I behave and how I treat others. So actually, what's lovely about the actual happiness events is meeting people who kind of want to see some of these things come true and actually recognise that we can, through the way we just treat each other and how kind or polite or friendly or supportive we are, that actually really matters. So I think actually I've met so many people through these meetings and other things that are genuinely changing the world and perhaps not even realising they're doing that. So Thank you for inspiring us all. Are there any questions? We've been through a process, but I suspect some of you may want to ask John Paul other things about changing the world. Anyone want to ask him and get some more insight before we run out of time? So there's one at the back and one in the middle here. So Alex, there's a mic just coming to you there, so at the back. Yeah, go for it. There we go. Hang on.
As a journalist, I did lots of things. I've written a lot of things about people who make a big difference. The really, really eye-opening one was writing about... Do you want me to repeat the question? Okay. Did everyone hear the question? Okay. I was working for the FT magazine. I was on staff of the FT magazine, and the editor of the FT wanted me to write about a woman called Camilla who ran this charity for children in London. Nobody had really heard of her then. It's the charity is Kids Company. Now she's very well known. She's been like Radio 4 Woman of the Year. And I really didn't want to go. I didn't want to go. Eventually, I got word that the editor wanted that story. And so I went along and I heard some of the stories about how terribly children in London were living, the conditions they were living in. Lots of people who were in prison, their parents were in prison, or they were dead, or they were alcoholics and addicts, and they were unavailable in many other ways. The children were bringing themselves up. I came across one family, a 10-year-old girl, a 6-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 2-year-old, and they were living in a car, and they didn't officially exist. They weren't on anything, no register or anything, and they were living by mugging people and stealing from shops. And that was quite a shock. And then Camilla showed me all the files of the hundreds and thousands of other children, and I felt really depressed, and I didn't really want to go in there. I don't want to do that story. But I was compelled because she's an amazing and interesting woman. I hung around with her for 6 months. And after 6 months, I'd heard a lot about one particular girl who, in the story that I wrote, I called Cleo. That's not her real name. She used to mug all the men whoever looked at her. She hated men. She'd been abused and attacked as a child. And I was quite fearful about this girl, and I'd heard so many stories about how terrifying she was. And one day Camilla said to me, meet me in Denmark Hill in South London, because we're going to go and meet someone. And I had no idea who we were going to meet. And she turned up, and we went to Nando's, and we bought one too many chicken meals, and I didn't know where we were going. We walked down the street from Nando's to the Maudsley, and I don't know the correct terminology, forgive me if I get it wrong, but I think it's called the Maudsley Mental Hospital. And we went in, and in the adult ward was this girl. And I say girl because she was underage, but she had been admitted because she was too young to have she shouldn't be in there, but because it was cheaper for the council to have her in a ward for 2 weeks than to get her accommodation. It was as cynical as that. She was in there for observation, which meant she had to stay for 2 weeks because they don't know if she's nuts until they've done the whole 2 weeks. So doctors said to her, you shouldn't be in here, but she had to be in there. People had taken her money away from her. She was going crazy because she was in there and she shouldn't have been, so she had to have all these sedatives. I turned up with Camilla, met this girl who I'd been terrified of, and she was just this little girl. She was 15, very small, very frail. And because I was with Camilla, I was her friend. It was okay. So I'm a man, but I was able to talk to her. And I was looking around the room, and there were people who were literally banging their heads against the wall and starting to bleed, and the nurses weren't doing anything about it. I tucked my notebook down my trousers because Camilla said the paranoid schizophrenic, they won't like to see you with your notebook. Kind of a joke, but actually kind of true. So I was sitting there with Camilla, with this girl, and I went home, I just burst into tears because I thought, what terrible thing in the world. And it's my responsibility as a writer to tell people about this stuff. It's okay to do the fun stuff, the frivolous stuff, which I love. Let's not make any mistake. I love mucking about and being silly. But that really hit me as a responsibility. So I wrote that story, and the really happy thing about it is, like I said, nobody had really heard of Camilla. It wasn't a story that had at the end a line that said, the Financial Times is raising money for Kids Company. It had nothing about that. No website, nothing. But we somehow raised £500,000 for Kids Company because that story it just told itself. And what was amazing was that because the FT is an international publication, I was sitting at my desk, and some weeks and months afterwards, I was still getting checks from countries overseas where people were like, I got this check. Again, I was practically reduced to tears. I got a check from India for about 20 rupees, which is like not much. But they said, this is for the poor children of London. And I felt so moved that they'd been so moved by the thing that I'd seen, and I'd just told people about it. Do you remember Gene Sharp's first thing, drawing attention to an issue? I feel really, really proud of myself for doing that. And that's what got me started on it. Thank you for the question. What a long answer.
Thank you, John Paul. There's another question here. In fact, there was... No, that's the end. It says Stan there.
What you're saying actually echoes the poster at the end there that Action for Happiness has produced. To feel, if you want to feel good, do good, and that's a very important message. I think it's not about doing good for yourself, but do good for others, and you'll feel good in doing that.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you. Couldn't agree more.
Great. Well, I think that's actually a really lovely note to end on. It's a very inspiring and moving story, and we're very glad you decided to do that and decided to tell us all how to change the world as well. Who here feels inspired to go and do something different or take some action as a result of the conversations they've had this evening? Fabulous. I look forward to hearing how that works out.
Yeah,
Thank you again. Please join me in thanking John Paul for being here, and thank you as well.